Welcome back to Fast Market, everyone. Kevin Hinks and Kevin Green here for our cash tag segment. For that, I'd like to bring in live from LikeFolio.com, Miss Megan Brantley. She's the Vice President of Research at LikeFolio.com. Digital advertising, such an important part of what we have going on the next couple of weeks with how these companies make money. Megan, tell us the LikeFolio data on digital advertising.
Yeah, so I think this is a really fun one. We have a lot of names on the docket to discuss today, and this is one where even though at LikeFolio, we can't really gauge what digital ad spend looks like, but we can gauge where consumers are spending their time and where the eyeballs are going. And we know that ad dollars are likely to follow those consumer eyeballs. And so when we break this down, we're looking at this mention buzz because we're looking for consumer engagement. And we can see two clear leaders whenever we break down a lot of the names, whether we're talking about social media or whether we're talking about search advertising. And those two names that are really leading are Meta and also Google. And when we look at Meta, I think what's really interesting on this one name is that it's Reels, which is essentially its TikTok copycat, is really leading the way when it comes to year-over-year growth. You can see on this chart here, mentions are up 94% year-over-year. This is really indicative of user engagement. So this tells us that Meta has done a really good job of kind of recreating TikTok. And when you look at TikTok down there, you see its growth has slowed dramatically. And so I think that this bodes well for Meta. We see this as perhaps the largest beneficiary of ad spend at large if it continues to rebound like Meta indicated that it did last quarter. Another interesting name to kind of break down on this chart is Google, because we have a couple of different places. We've got search ads, but we also have YouTube, and that's where Google generates a lot of its ad revenues via YouTube. And we see YouTube growth year over year, but we have this growth about in line with where it was last quarter. And we know that last quarter, I think ad revenue kind of disappointed when it came to YouTube at $9.2 billion, which is crazy that that was a disappointment. But we do see kind of much of the same when it comes to Google. So if we're starting to rank these, we really like what we're seeing out of Meta. Google looks to be about the same with what we measured last quarter. And another shocking or fun one to watch is Amazon, because we know that Amazon added ads onto its Amazon Prime Video offering. And we saw what this did for Netflix. I think the ads started rolling out in January of this year. So this is another name to watch that we think will get a big boost if ad spend does continue to rebound.
So Megan, when you're looking at the Meta data, what I find very interesting, especially going into this year, which is going to be an election season, are you also seeing maybe some seasonality that's taking place when it comes to Meta and its the ad revenue that they are able to generate? And then also just kind of going on top of that, are they recapturing market share, or is this new organic growth that we are seeing when it comes to Meta? Because they did have a little bit of a lull there over the last, let's say 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah, both are really good points. I think that for us, we like to look at this on a year-over-year perspective because it helps to kind of take into account for that seasonality. But because this is an election year, we would expect ad spend to ramp up, I believe, in the back half of the year. It may be starting to ramp right now, but we'll really be watching for that in the later quarters of this year, just to see how that shakes out. But I think that in general, we do see a little bit of I would say lagging in Meta's Facebook offering. So there's a little bit of a shift in where users are migrating to, and that's really in favor of Instagram, and it's increasingly its Reels platform. But we do see some signs of market share still. Whenever you look at Reels versus TikTok, we see a lot of users who have kind of jumped ship. And you can really see that reflected long-term in these happiness levels. So TikTok did not used to be on the bottom. TikTok used to be at the top of this chart here with overall consumer sentiment. And so we see a little bit of mistrust brewing among consumers and among chats. And so I think that this is something interesting to watch, and definitely something that I'm sure Meta is very proud of, that they were able to kind of combat that competition from TikTok that has been rising for the last several years.
Megan, breaking news this morning for Meta Platforms was WhatsApp and Threads being taken off the Chinese App Store. There's the difference between the U.S. and China. We talk about it for 9 months. They do it in 5 minutes, and they just take it off. But here's my question. With the strength in Reels and the momentum going towards Reels, Isn't this a precursor to TikTok being taken out of the United States, basically?
I think that if that were to happen, if TikTok were taken out in the United States, that would be music to Meta's ears and be an enormous boost to the company. But I don't know. I think that could be speculation at this point. So, we're not necessarily playing like that's something that's going to happen, but it's certainly something that we're watching unfold in our data, a rising mistrust for TikTok just overall as a platform and lower levels of overall consumer happiness, which for us, our happiness metric is really indicative of that long-term growth. And so you don't want to see kind of that shift down from a happiness perspective. But I do think, that is something, what you just mentioned, that announcement could be a significant headwind for Meta and something that it's going to have to address whenever it reports earnings.
I want to thank Megan Brantley, the Vice President of Research at LikeFolio.com, for coming on the show, as always, and bringing the incredible LikeFolio data that you guys bring on a daily basis. Thank you for coming on, Megan. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for having me, guys. Y'all too.
All right. Now, Kev, let's get to a trade on Meta platforms. You brought a trade that